Hello, everyone, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday in our wonderful June Dairy Month. And I see a few of y'all are still connecting to audio, so I will keep talking while y'all do that. Some quick housekeeping for today. We do ask that you keep your camera off. I'll turn mine off here in a minute, just for ease of streaming from some of those of our dairies that are joining us from a more rural setting. Yes, John Goddard, that means you, camera off. He likes to photobomb. John is one of our county agents and we love him dearly. So if you need Master Dairy Credit today, please fill out the link that I've sent you in the chat. That will take you to our follow-up survey. All I need is your name and that you were here and which one you attended. If you want to tell us what you liked about it and what you'd like to hear in the future, that would be great. If you don't, you're stuck with whatever pops into my brain for that month. So if you want to hear something, let us know. We are reporting, so if you have to leave early for any reason, or if you have trouble staying logged in, not to worry, I'll send out the link by the end of the day or by tomorrow or by next week, depending on how many students pop into my office over the next couple of hours, but we'll get it to you, don't worry. Our speaker today is the amazing Jorge Delgado from Alltech, and he is our employee and management connection extraordinaire. And as we all know, in June Dairy Month, we need those people that keep the farm running, that keep the cows milking. So I always learn a lot when Jorge talks, hoping it's useful for all of you as well. And with that, I'm going to turn off my camera and turn it over to Jorge.
Thank you so much, Elise. That was a really nice intro. The amazing Jorge. Not a lot of people calls me that. Not even my son here at home. So I feel good today. Thanks for starting the meeting in my day like that. Appreciate that, and I appreciate the invitation. So one of the things that Elise asked me to talk about today is how to manage employees and how to motivate employees. That's the main thing that we're going to cover today. And I think she clarified and did a good start, because we just need these guys to start, to manage our dairy and to work with our cows. And this is not only applicable for dairies, it's just applicable for agriculture. As you guys know, agriculture is highly dependable of immigrants. And one of the things that keeps these guys motivated is the education. And of course, we have to do everything that we can to keep these employees to feed this nation and feed our country and our families. We depend on these guys. So as you know, many dairies, they struggle with many things, but one of the things that we're struggling since, I know and I started working with this role is to find people and retain people. So one of the things that we're going to see today is try to discover how can we retain the people through motivation, education, other tools that we're going to talk about today. So the first thing is, to understand, what we're going to do through to motivate these employees. And the first thing that we're going to see in this presentation is a very bare definition of motivation and why we need to understand that. The benefits, of course, of motivating employees and the reality of the facts of the dairy industry and how the approach that we have. And of course, based on that approach and based on the reality and those facts, we're going to try to discover what are the things that we can change in the dairy industry and with your customers, if you're a producer or anything, so we can have an environment where with employees stay safe and healthy, and of course, motivated and efficient for our business. So let's go with the motivation. I just found two real simple definitions of what motivation means in Google, and one of those is, it says here, and I'm going to read it. It says here, the reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. So note that I underline the word behavior. And the second simple definition that I found in Google is the general desire. Also, this word is underlined, and it says that the general desire or willingness of someone to do something. So these two words, behaving and desire, it's something that sometimes we want to change, and it is really hard. We can't change how the worker is going to behave, and we can't change how, if he or she will desire to work and stay in our farm and do what it was he or she's supposed to do. So those are the kind of things that we struggle, and we need to think about how can we change the behavior and how can we change the desire of this person to stay and work in our farm. And sometimes what we do, we use two approaches to influence that change. The first approach that we use sometimes is emotional. So emotional, we talk to the worker, we use words and meetings, and we try to get in their minds that this is very important, and we get to the emotional side of the worker. Sometimes those things don't work, and also we use the rational. The rational will be all the SOPs and protocols and rules and regulations that we use on a farm. So the combination, I think, it brings success to the farm in any operation. It has to be some ways emotional and some ways rational. So that's what we're going to talk about today, using these two ways to influence the person in the emotional side and the rational side to influence the change. So hopefully they get motivated and retained in our dairy operations. Everybody knows the benefits of retaining a good employee through any resources that we have. One of the main benefits is, of course, reducing turnover and decreasing hire and training costs, which are very expensive. If we can accomplish this, of course, we're going to improve productivity. So that is not, something that we already know. But the one thing, the benefit that we need to think about in the dairy industry is not only productivity, but it's also think about that these guys are essentials. This hashtag became popular during the pandemic, but I think it made us realize how important these guys are. Whatever productivity is, or whatever efficiency is in a dairy farm, any other agricultural business, we need to start thinking that we need these guys no matter what. Even if these guys are educated or not, if these guys, they can perform or not, these guys are essential for this country. Now we learned this lesson through the pandemic when we saw the shelves that they were empty, either from packing plants or any other things. We depend highly on these guys on labor, and especially in immigrant labor force. So we need to think of these guys as essential and think about the ways that how we're going to motivate and retain these guys. So unfortunately, the reality of these employees and the resources that we have when it comes to the pool of workers that we need for agriculture, and especially their industry, is really hard. And I'm not going to say, and I'm not going to present here solutions that you guys already not know already, or secrets that you don't know, or things that will change the industry, because the reality is that this is really, really hard. One of the things that we know is that most of the workers that we depend on that come from Latin America as an immigrants, they don't have access to education. And we'll see some of the numbers, and I will show you, how the education is a limitation for these workers. So because the education is a limitation for these workers, it will limit how much we can interact with these people and how much we can train. So it will make it for us really hard to motivate and train and retain these people. Is really hard. The other thing is, and again, I'll show you some numbers here in a pie in a couple of the next slides ahead of us, but many of these workers, they don't have their experience. Some say that they've milked cows before, but the reality is these guys, they've milked maybe 1 or 2 cows in Nicaragua, Honduras, or Guatemala, or even if they come from the cities from here, they don't have the dairy experience. So that make, again, the job for us really hard to motivate and train and retain these guys. It's really hard. The other thing is there's no connection with the industry. When these guys, they come, usually these workers, they start milking cows and they don't have a connection with the dairy industry. What I'm trying to say is they don't know how important their job is. And we're going to talk about this in a couple of the slides here coming up, about how you have to, and we have to make these guys relevant. And by making these guys relevant, they will understand how important is their job and how they can become partners in our industry instead of just workers. So let's talk about experience with cattle, as I mentioned before. If you can see in this pie, 50% of the workers coming to work in the dairy industry here in the United States mainly are working in construction or working in Mexico, making clothes for the industries here in the US, like Gap or any of the fancy brands here. If you can see in the tags, many of the clothes that are made in Mexico, it's a lot of people working and doing those kind of things in factory there. The others, they work in construction, factory, a little percentage work in agriculture, mainly beans and grains, just family operations, really small. But you're going to see here that only 2% of the population coming here to working in the dairy industry, only 2% they have minimal experience with cattle. And remember, again, these 2% is only working just with 1 or 2 cows. And you might be lucky that maybe they come from Torreon, from Mexico, and they were working in a dairy where they were milking 500 cows or 1,000 cows, but with different expectations, different culture, different language, different SOP. So it's going to be a total different deal. So we expect sometimes too much from these guys, and we are not there to join those expectations, to meet those expectations. We just, based on this experience, we just have these guys, jumping into a parlor with, a double 16 parallel or maybe more, double 40, or a rotary parlor or driving a skid loader. But we have to think first about what experience they have. So only 2%, that is really low. And some people sometimes is shocked that only 2%. The other thing, the problem that we have is the average education for these workers. So Liz, during my, if you can hear me, I always like for the people in my presentations to interact and answer some questions if we can. Is that possible, Liz? If
Yeah,
people
I can
microphones or in text?
Yeah, I can set up a poll real quick. We can have them respond to us in the chat. Chat's probably fastest.
That is
Pay attention, people. We're gonna do a chat.
So one of the questions that I have for the audience here in this conversation is, what do you think is the average education for the average worker coming from Latin America to the US? What is the percentage that finished 2nd grade? What is the percentage that finished 8th grade? And what do you think is the percentage of people that finished 10th grade? What do you guys think? Give me a number, please. Any number. There's somebody. Are you unmuting people in the?
Yeah,
okay.
I got it.
So anybody can give me just a number, so to make these interactive and so people doesn't fall asleep and stop texting on the phones.
I was thinking an 8th grade average education. I was clearly wrong with those numbers that you threw out.
Anybody is brave enough to give a number on the text or unmute the microphone and tell me something about the education? So what is the percentage that finished 2nd grade, 6th grade, and 10th grade?
So we have anywhere between 75 and 90% for 2nd grade.
Okay. Yep.
50 and 25% for 8th grade. What about 6th grade?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, let's show this slide. That is good numbers. Look at this slide here. For 2nd grade, from the people that we're pulling and we're using to work in the dairy industry, 89%, a very high percentage, only finished 2nd grade. 6th grade, only 9% of the people coming and work in agriculture here in the US, especially in dairy industry, and only a 2% finished 10th grade. The rest is no more education. 89%, that is really high. So we have to think about these things. The lack of connection with the dairy industry, the lack of, capabilities of working with cows and the not access to education, that makes really, really hard our jobs to work with, immigrants, labor coming especially from Latin America. The other is the facts. The facts are, that we are competing with other industries. Landscaping right now, you're going to see even more and more competition as we see that are more and more gaps in jobs in the cities. If you go anywhere right now, you're going to see signs of we are hiring everywhere, all the way from restaurants to corporate business. So nobody's filling out those jobs. So who do you think is going to fill out those jobs? Of course, it's going to be filled, especially restaurants and the other businesses where they don't require a lot of education is going to be filled, but the same pool that we were pulling from for agriculture. So it's going to be more and more problematic for us as agriculture to find these resources, because these guys are going to move to fill out these gaps. Of course, not working in dairies is not easy. So these guys, they have to work long hours, and it's really hard, especially working in the parlor or with calves. So these guys are always looking for the next step to either be promoted or to work in a different industry where they can have better, benefits and safety and everything that they are looking for. The other problem is that in the dairy industry, we don't have a lot of places to grow, right? A milker comes and And maybe if she or he is willing to do it, he might move to be a cow pusher, and then from a cow pusher he will move to maternity manager, and from maternity manager maybe a herdsman, and then from a herdsman a feeder, and that's it. So these guys are always looking for that improvement, and that's why, you know, one of the main issues that we have in the dairy industry is that workers are always constantly looking for a raise, and for a raise. And it's been out of control because we don't have a base on how to compare those salaries. And now, you know, salaries all over the place because the pressure coming from the workers. The other thing is these guys are always, you know, looking to going back to their country. So how can you possibly retain and train and motivate a worker that is always thinking about going back to their country? So this is really hard. It's very difficult. So I don't have any formulas, but we're going to try to accomplish, you know, what you guys are looking for today, because it's really hard. That is the reality. I don't want to say that this is very easy. The other problem that we have is the approach that we have as consultants, as managers, as owners of dairy operations, when we see our dairy with our eyes, not looking at the people, but always looking at the cows. The approach that we have on the dairy industry is, of course, that we have to care about the cow. But what about caring for the worker that is behind the cow, the worker that is behind the fresh cow, the worker that is milking that cow, the worker that is taking care of that calf? Sometimes we miss that part. You know, we bring these guys and we want these guys to accomplish certain goals and benchmarks on the dairy, but we don't think about how they feel, what they think, ask for their feedback, reviews, or anything like that, or even the work conditions. And just to give an example, I'm going to show you this picture here. That is a big parlor located in Indiana, and I need the help from the audience again, Liz. And the question for the audience here, and hopefully somebody can unmute the microphone and be brave, or text, it's okay too. But the question that I have here is, if you are an owner, a dairy manager, a herdsman, or a consultant, if you come to this farm and you just show up in this parlor, exactly like this, what are the things that you see? There's no right or wrong answers. But what do you see in this picture? And I just want to see the approach that we have, just to make my point. What do you see, Liz? If you look at this picture.
Do you want me to go first? Because I've seen this slide before, and I think I might bias your
Don't
sample.
go first.
Caitlin, what do you see? I'll call him a grad student.
There you go. What do you see, Caitlin? Poor grad students.
Caitlin. Oh, that's not good. She's eating her lunch, not paying attention.
See,
all right, Rancid, what do you see? Call on my agents.
What do you see?
Give me that question one time. I just hung up the phone with the producer.
Sorry.
The question was, if you look at this picture of a dairy farm, what do you see?
First person not paying attention.
Anything wrong? Anything right? What pops out?
Much bigger than what I've got primarily in Henry County.
Much bigger. Yep.
What
cement floor.
Cement floor.
Yeah.
Chef, what about you? What do you see?
Looks nice and clean to me.
Okay. One more.
I see all the workers piled up together down there is what I see.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah, we're not going to take more, but that's exactly right. You know, everybody was right. You know, but we have a division here. Some people is thinking about, you know, the piles of workers, and that's what a lot of people think about when they see these pictures. All the way in the end. So when people is looking at these workers, they tend to think, well, this parlor is not efficient. These workers are not efficient, right? That's exactly what we see when we jump in parlors like this. Some people says, well, it's clean, but only one of the persons that answer the question say that this is a concrete floor. Why he was thinking about this? Because that was the only person that was thinking about that this is hard to work on. So if we look at this parlor, you know, these guys are working at least 12 hours a day in this parlor. But when we look at this parlor, you know, we're just looking at the cows. Are the cows clean? Are the legs clean? Are the workers that are being efficient? Are the deep cups, you know, hanging in the right place? The hoses are too long. the units are dairy, whatever it is, but we never look at the people. And there was only one person, fortunately, in this group that looked at the concrete floor. So, and that's why what I wanted to see. So when we look at these, we look at the cows, but we don't look at the people behind these cows. And we need to start changing that. And just to show you something here, you know, that to you know, prove this point right, is that many of the dairies, they have to think about the cow. Yes, of course. But we have to start thinking about the people behind those cows. And just by the numbers, this is a small study made from Cornell many years ago with many farms that they were doing an excellent job. And even these farms, if you can see these numbers, only 16% of these farms provided formal performance reviews. Only 16%. So we were talking at the beginning of this conversation with Liz, and you know, many questions comes to the farm, and they say how the workers they feel. How can we know how the workers feel, if they have any feedback or any ideas or whatever the improvements, if we only do a 16% of our time we do reviews? And this is not the reality. In general, in the dairy industry in America, this percentage is even lower. Very few farms adopt, you know, the culture of doing formal reviews at least once a year. 42% were providing informal training only in the form of shadowing other employees. So this is very usual. When we hire a new employee, we hire Manuel or Jose, we send him to the parlor, and he's going to be trained by another worker that he never received any formal training or technical training either. So now we're training somebody with lack of resources and lack of tools, and we're providing this, you know, this individual a poor training method that is proven that is not been working. Yes, we have to use other workers because we don't have the time. But I think the first step is to do a formal and technical training using any kind of materials and resources that we can provide. And we'll show that later. 40% of the dairies in this study, they reported giving raises informally. That's very high. And again, we're going back to one of the slides that we talked about before, that the structure when it comes to pay raises is being informal because it comes just with no reference, with no reviews, with no performance reviews. A worker comes to the farm, and you know, these workers, they ask for raises, and then we enter in panic mode, and we have to give him a raise. The worker says, look, I'm going to go to the other farm because the other farm is going to pay me $1 more. And then we say, okay, I'm going to give you the $1. And that is usually what is not working. So if we look at these numbers, we have to pay attention that, you know, again, we're not paying attention to the worker. We're just paying attention to the cow, and we have to pay attention and go back to the worker who is behind the cow. So we need to improve these numbers, and we have to change the approach. The other thing is, just to, again, to prove this point, is that always we're thinking about the cow, which is correct and which is right. But even when it comes about the cow, we in the industry, we have 5 points to talk about the freedom for this cow. And you all should know these points. And one of the points is freedom for hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, or disease, freedom to express normal behavior, and freedom from fear and distress. So let me ask you this. Do we have the same 5 rules and regulations as a state, as county, as industry for the workers working with the cows? And I'm going to pause a little bit there, and I'm going to see what you guys have to say. Do we have those rules and regulations? Do we have those laws for the workers?
I would say it's our classic extension answer of it depends. I'm betting it depends on the farmer, their management style, and probably even the state that they're in and what those state regulations are.
Exactly. And depends. And this is going to be in general, we don't have it. Yep. So it is kind of, you know, that is a reality. And we have to start thinking and changing these kind of things, not only thinking about the cow, but thinking about the worker who is behind the cow. So the solution, let's talk about these, you know, and again, I don't have any magic formulas. You guys seen and read many articles during, you know, all these years in books and magazines and attended to trainings like these or seminars about labor management, and everybody's going to give you the same answer. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to try to have an instructor is going to be easy to remember. And what I call this approach of management for employees and motivation is going to be called the structure 3-4-5. And 3, 4, 5 comes from the following. 3, it comes from 3 pillars of employee motivation that we're going to talk about now. And 4 comes from the 4 drivers of motivation. And 5, it comes from the 5 ways to reset the work environment in the dairy industry. So remember, 3, 4, 5. 3 pillars of motivation, 4 drivers of motivation, and 5 ways to reset the work environment. If you combine all these things, I think we can be more successful. It's not going to fix the problem in general as a dairy industry, but I think we can see more motivation and we can see more retention and we can see more benefits of doing this. So let's talk about each one of these pillars. The first one is the 3 pillars of employee motivation. And this is including you guys and myself. We all need to be motivated using these tools. The 3 pillars are, first one is measurement. The second is relevancy. And the third one is no anonymity. So let's talk about each one of these. When I talk the first pillar, which is measurement, I'm not talking about measuring the employees being measured by the owner or being measured by the herd manager or being measured by the consultant. What I'm talking about is something that we have to think outside of the box. We have to create methods or systems where the worker himself or herself can measure herself or himself. They have to be able to measure their own progress. They have to understand their own level of contribution, and they don't have to depend on the manager, consultant, or owner in order to do these. You can create these tools, you can create the systems, but they have to measure themselves. One of the things that is very successful, and you're going to see in many dairies, is the breeders. Why the breeders are so successful when it comes to measure themselves? If you see many of the dairies, especially the ones that they hire external breeders, they are the ones checking for heats, and they are the ones, of course, entering their own results, their own data, printing their own data to breed cows, looking for those cows, and especially going into the computers and looking at the repro benchmarks. So they get excited because they are seeing their own numbers and they are seeing their own progress. You're going to see that in many, many dairies. And you're not going to see these in many of the milkers because the milkers, they have very little access to, these kind of benchmarks, but we can create it, ways to measure themselves. So again, I'm going to ask the audience, what can we do for a milker, which is one of the most difficult positions, I think, in my opinion, to measure themselves in the dairy? What kind of benchmarks we can create for them so they can measure themselves? So please give me some examples.
I usually think of somatic cell count, right? Like how good a job are we doing in the parlor of cleaning?
Okay. So remember, this is to measure their own progress, measure themselves. So one person has to be able to see themselves in those results. So somatic cell count is very general, right? Because it will depend on the cow pusher, the milker, the nutritionist, the veterinarian, the feeder, everybody involved in the dairy. So think more about these. What other example can we use? Simple examples. Think about it. Give me a couple of examples, please.
Turns through the parlor?
Yeah, for a milker. How can he or she measure their own progress and his or her contribution in the parlor?
Number of cows, how long it takes them to get through.
Yeah, that could be one. That could be one. Of course, depends of, the other guys too. How many milkers are in the parlor, the cow pusher too, right?
Well, to me, it depends on when you start as a milker, you're not going to be as fast or as sanitary as someone who's been there 10 years.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's kind of like a golf game. You're going to start off slow and know you're going to get better.
Yeah.
Same thing here. You measure yourself. It don't matter how many milkers are in a barn. It means if you can only do X number today and tomorrow you add, or in a week, you can add 3 more. Well, that's more.
Yep, it could be. Exactly. And it has some limitations on it. Somebody else? Anybody else? Liz, somebody else there that you can point and make him wake up?
I don't know. John Goddard, what do you think?
I think what time they get through.
I got some very simple, like examples, and I think the example that you guys give is really good. So my Excel count is mainly the ones that we use, like Liz was saying, but it's really complicated because is not going to measure the progress of that individual worker because it depends on many. So I wouldn't use that one. What about just percentage of clean T-dents? You know, in many of the dairies, or many of us as consultants, we go on the farm and we are checking T-dents with alcohol, and then we're scoring those things at the end of the shift. And then, you know, the milker says, well, somebody else is scoring me, I'm not scoring myself. What about if we create a system where the milker themselves is the one scoring her own T-dents or his own T-dents? Somebody says, well, you're too crazy because these guys are going to lie about it, or are not going to be engaged. Well, we have to think about systems where they are going to be the ones measuring themselves. Filters, that's very simple, right? Also includes a lot of people here, but it could be filters by shift, filters by territory, whatever we can make it. But think about things where they can measure themselves. So that's one of the things that we have to think about. Let them measure themselves, let them write in the information, let them enter the information, let them, you know, with your help, clarify and interpret that information. So that is one of the things that we need to start changing. Think about systems, and very simple systems that these guys, they can use. The second pillar of motivation, remember, are three. And the second one is anonymity. This is very simple. Nobody likes, you know, to be unknown and recognized on the farm, and everybody likes to be understand and appreciated. And of course, you know, when we as owners, consultants, and managers, we recognize those qualities, these guys, they get very excited. This is nothing new, but it's something that we have to remind ourselves that nobody likes to be unknown, anonymous, because we have to recognize those people. We have to let them know that they are very important for the farm and this business and this industry. This is very important. The third pillar is the pillar of relevance. We have to make these guys aware of how relevant these guys are for the industry. If you ask these guys why they're working here in any agricultural job, especially in the dairy industry, many of these guys, they will say, well, I'm here to support my family. But they do more than that. They are here to feed this nation. When you explain to these people in a meeting, before, after the meetings, or in conversations, general or informal conversations, that what they do, it matters to this nation, they will feel really proud and they will own what they do. They will now feel part of the dairy industry, and just instead of just feeling somebody that is not recognized. So who's the job of making these guys relevant and inform that these guys is relevant and remind that these guys are relevant? Is you. You as a consultant, you as an extension, is you as a manager, you as an owner. You have to make these guys to feel relevant. And that's something that we sometimes, or all the time, we forget about that. When we start a meeting, let's say we start a meeting about calving processes, and we start right into the technical, you know, information with these workers. But what about starting a meeting with telling these guys, hey, your job is important because from you, this dairy industry, this job, this business will improve because we need your help. So we have to make them relevant. So those are the three main pillars of motivation. The next ones are the four drivers of motivation. And again, these ones, in order for work, they have to be linked and they have to work and act together. The first driver is the drive to acquire. Everybody is here to make some money, including social status. Everybody wants to obtain benefits, either a new car or a house or a phone or clothes or pay for the bills, etc. So the first drive that we have to think about in a structured environment of creating a better culture of rotation is that we have to have a drive to acquire, and we have to provide that. So it's very important to provide benefits, and also, of course, talk about structure for raises and paying. The second one, connected to all these four, is the drive to bond. Every worker out there wants to bond with you, with the consultant, with the manager, with the owner, with the other coworkers. They want to form connections with you, with the peers around. And you and us, we have to create the environment to facilitate these. We have to be open to communication. We have to be open socially and culturally inside of the farms to create this drive to bond. The third driver is the drive to comprehend. And this is very, very, very important. And you're going to find out that most of my presentations will focus on these, the drive to comprehend. These guys are hungry, extremely hungry for education. They like to learn. Every time that we go to a farm, it's not only me, but it could be any extensionist or consultant or anybody else. They usually are so excited, they're so motivated, they ask so many questions. At the end of the meetings, they always ask to come back and everything, because these guys, they want to learn. They want to satisfy their curiosity. There's no difference between you and me. That's why we read, that's why we're here, that's why we go to conference. They want to do the same thing. So you have to provide in your farms exactly the same thing, an environment that will facilitate these guys the drive to comprehend. And the last one in these 4 drivers of motivation is the drive to defend. The drive to defend is something that we already have. If I ask Liz, you know, she's very passionate about her family and about this industry. And if I ask any one of you, you will answer the same. These guys, they have the same thing. They want to defend what they have. But how can they defend something that they don't understand? Once they understand, you know, that they are given the environment and the structure to comprehend, to bond, and to acquire, they will defend what they have to promote justice, to protect against external threats and everything that they have. They will work and sacrifice everything that they have for their family and for industry once they understand that they are motivated and they are capable of doing these things. So we have to make these guys relevant, going back again to the last slide of the 3 pillars of motivation. And then we get the 5. The number 5 comes from the 5 ways to reset. And the 5 ways to reset the industry, it comes from these 5 letters, R-E-S-E-T, reset, that includes rules and regulations. We have to have rules and regulations in our farms. We have to have education information. I'm repeating that again. We have to have ways of social and cultural involvement for the workers. We have to have economic incentives, again, back to the drive to acquire. And then we have the tools for these guys to perform their jobs. So let's talk about very quick about each one of these ones. First, rules and regulations. This is the thing first. Rules and regulations. Many dairies, they have employee handbooks, but there's one thing that we're missing in these employee handbooks. And sometimes the mission and statement is not connected with the workers. We talk about, again, you know, that we have to milk cows and keep cows healthy and provide, you know, good feed for the cows, and we have to produce the high quality standard milk and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we never include the workers. So how can you connect with the worker and then lead if your mission statement in these employee handbooks is not connected to the worker? So the first thing that you have to know is their whys. And if they understand your why and you connect their why with your why in your mission statement, now you guys become partners instead of just become a worker and an owner or a manager. So the first thing that you have to explain is how to connect through these mission statements, through these regulations and rules with the worker. That's going to build a foundation of trust. And of course, again, explain your why and understand their why and how to connect their why to your why. And these, of course, the rules and regulations will serve as a screening method for many workers that are here for the wrong wrong reasons. Many workers, if they see that you have rules and regulations in your farms, you have an employee handbook, you have SOPs, you have posted regulations on the farm, they will see that you're serious, and they might not be the right candidate to enter your farm, and they will leave right away. That's good, because now you didn't waste your time hiring a wrong person, because now that person knew that you were serious about this business. The second, after R, comes with E, and this is education and information. When it comes to education and information, we all know, understand that these guys are, you know, hunger for education, but we have to create the proper learning environment. You know, sometimes we go to the farms and there's not a clean room or with chairs and tables and stuff where these workers, they can sit down and understand what you're trying to explain. And sometimes what we do is even worse, we just go on the parlor, we go everywhere and we try to explain things as these guys are busy. So you have to stop and make a pause when you guys are trying to, you know, relate to these guys when it comes to learning and processes like these. So you have to create the environment, a clean room, a projector, good lighting, good voice, good body language, good information, visualization, really easy to understand. Those are the things that you have to be prepared. No, I know that it's for some people, it's really hard to train people, but if you don't have experience, you have to be prepared and try to set up the right environment for learning. And of course, again, start every training process with a why. Why we do it? but not only why and how, like, I read in many articles that, this is the why and how for the cow. They have to also understand it. You have to understand what is their why, what is their buying into this. If we reduce less somatic cell count, or if we have less cows in the hospital, then it's going to be beneficial for you because you have to milk less cows in the hospital. You will have more time to have lunch or whatever it is, or go to the family. So always try to understand also their why. And learning is something that training is something that we have to do as a mandatory part of the process of keeping the dairy industry alive. One of the things that we don't do a lot is train, people in antibiotic stewardship, and of course, training these guys about animal activists. We are, always challenged with, consumers, and we're always challenged with these animal activists about what we're doing, and we're not doing enough job of training these guys on these two main areas. So one of the things that we did with Alltech, the farm program, and Elanco, and the Animal Agriculture Alliance, is that we created this video that talks to the workers about what an animal activist is. If you think about it, if you go back to this slide, or you think about this slide about the education of lack of experience working with dairy cattle, many of these guys coming from Latin America, they don't know what an animal activist is. Absolutely no idea. Because, animal activism in poor countries like Latin America, they don't exist. It's just we have to eat. Here we're more spoiled, and there's more, regulations and activism like that. So the question is, if these guys don't understand what an animal activist is, how, these guys are going to defend the dairy industry again as an animal activist? You see many videos, you watch many videos before, and all the target are the workers. So we have to train these workers, and we have to inform them what an animal activist is in order for them to defend what they have and use them as a shield to defend what we have too. So this video has a link. If you see the link in the left bottom corner of my slide, you will see the link, and when you access to this link, is password protected, because again, we're doing this again, animal activists, so we have to protect this video. But I encourage you guys to please watch this video, share this video among your producers, and if you are a producer, please share this video with your workers. It's in Spanish with closed caption in English, and explaining the whys and hows an animal activist. But the main thing, it makes these guys to feel proud and relevant to the dairy industry. I don't think we have time to show the video list, so we're just gonna go to the next one. When it comes to education, you have to be very visual, very clear, very practical, celebrate those goals, and of course, measuring. One of the things that I do, and I think I can see myself in the camera here, is that I use, when I'm training these workers, I use a lot of toys. This is a anatomical udder. Is not very cheap, but you can buy in websites, udders like these, or toys that simulates white blood cells or red blood cells or antibiotics or bacteria or whatever you want to explain. But be very visual and use a lot of toys and a lot of animation. You can create your own PowerPoints, you can create movies if you want, but be very, very visual and use a lot of these prompts like I use in my trainings. So one of the things that we usually are asked is like, where can I find training materials? And this is something that I want to share with you guys, and I want you guys to scan this QR code. Liz, if you scan this QR code, can you open it? I think you should be able to.
I am actively trying, but I'm not that fast on my phone. So.
All you have to do is just open the camera and put it there, and you will be directed to our website.
Yep.
Anyway, we're not going to talk about this website, but this is a platform that we created with Iowa Extension and Nebraska Dairy Extension, that it's going to be very useful for anybody in the dairy industry. This is public and free, and all you have to do is just log in, create an account, and the workers of your dairy operation will have access to a lot of training videos and a lot of training material. Once these guys, they watch these videos, they can then, after that, they can take a quiz that is very, very simple. And then once they pass 80% of the quiz, they can print a diploma that it will make them feel proud of what they did. And also, they can have access to many posters that we created, many infographic posters, and 2 very cool animated videos that explains what is a somatic cell count and how the cow produces feed after the cow produces, milk after eating the feed provided by you guys. So I encourage you guys to copy this QR code and use it on your farms and with your clients. This is super, super cool, a public free tool that you guys can use. We're not going to watch that video again. And the other letter and part of the 5 ways to restructure these is, of course, change what we have as social and cultural involvement on the dairy industry, and especially in our farms. You know, when we talk about culture, some farms, they say that they don't have a culture. Well, every farm has a culture, but you have to define what your culture is, and you have to start investigating and creating that culture and redefining and restructuring that culture. But this culture has to be shared by all the members of the organization. And this is something that, you know, as an industry, we lack sometimes. When we go to the farms, we ask the worker, what is the name of the owner, what is the name of the farm, and they don't know. How can they don't know this kind of things? They have to know. They are not culturally involved in the farm. So when you think about culture, you have to share with these guys the beliefs. You know, again, we talk about, you know, rules and regulations and mission statement. You have to make these guys available and aware of your beliefs. They have to be in the same page as you are. Assumptions. Sorry, I skipped one. The values. What values do you have? The norms that you have. Again, rules and regulations. The symbols, SOPs, the actions. Everything has to be in the same page, and even including using the same language pattern. So you have to create a culture following these points of action. You have to. And when we talk about culture, it's not only that we have to change the culture, create a culture in our dairy. When we think about retaining employees and especially attracting employees, we have also to think about the culture around our community, around the dairy. Is your community providing church services, or schools are open to receiving new workers and the new kids and any kind of service that these guys they would like? Is the community around you providing cultural events or sports? You know, Liz asked me this morning if I'm still playing soccer. Man, Latinos, we love soccer. And if we see a ball anywhere, we'll be there. So is your community offering these kind of things? And especially faith, you know, for me is very important, faith. You know, we can talk about many things about how to motivate employees. We can talk about money, we can talk about benefits, we can talk about rules and regulations, but if we don't have faith in ourselves, coming from the Lord, I think, you know, we're not going anywhere, and we're not going to accomplish anything, because we're always going to be feeling empty. So that's the first thing, in my opinion. When it comes to the other letter, E, you know, we talk about economic incentives. And when we talk about economic incentives, we have to be uniform, we have to offer ownership, and we have to be meaningful when offering these benefits. And of course, these benefits can include cultural incentives like we talked about before. One of the things that the dairy industry does well, but at the same time it's kind of confusing, is that mainly the benefits for a milker comes from the somatic cell count bonus. But let me ask you this. How many workers really understand what a somatic cell count is? 99% of the workers that we train do not understand what a somatic cell count is. So when we're giving a bonus based on somatic cell count, something that they don't understand, is that uniform? It's not. They will be, you know, owning this terminology. It's not. It's going to be meaningful? No. So we have to create, you know, ways and systems that they understand. So these incentives are really owned by the worker. The other thing is, of course, tools. You know, we have to provide the right tools. One example or two examples that I have here is 2 pictures of, you know, these 2 refrigerators in a calf ranch. So what do you see in these 2 pictures that I'm showing you here? These guys, they called us because these guys, they were having a lot of scours. And then we went into the fridge, and this is what we found. This is 2 different fridges. What do you see there? Liz,
Is the fridge even
you
on,
point.
Jorge? It looks terrible. Like, Flies have clearly been getting in it. Everything is spilled. I have no idea how long that colostrum has been there. I'm gonna bet it's longer than the 24 hours it's allowed to be in the refrigerator. And
Yeah.
I'm still not convinced it's on. Mostly not convinced it's on.
Yeah. Look, the garbage is next to the refrigerator.
Yeah,
We have Gatorade, we have the tacos there, we have the burritos, we have vaccines, we have empty bottles. They haven't been cleaned. You know, you can see the extension cord there because this fridge wasn't working. The temperature was really high. So no
Gotcha.
wonder these guys, they were complaining, right? But the main thing, and you, Liz, mentioned something at the beginning before we started this conference, right? These guys, the owner of these farms, they were blaming other workers. And when we came to this farm, this is what we found. So how can we, ask for something to be accomplished and achieved when we don't have the right tools? So you have to listen, you have to provide the feedback, you have to be open to provide and change the tools so these guys, they can operate and they can, accomplish these kind of things. Sometimes when these guys, they don't receive the tools that they need, they just, get upset, they just get sad and they don't perform well. And not because they don't have tools, sometimes it's because you don't listen to them. So you have, and we have to start listening and providing the right tool. This is something that happens a lot. Parlor, calving, calves, feeding, nutrition, whatever it is, many areas lack of the right tools. And then we have workers, that are not, feeling that they don't feel that they understood, and then you start failing and failing in many areas. So at the beginning, I say that I don't have the formula to change this, but I do. And this is a summary, this formula of things that we talk about, that if we can apply these in every single business, I think we can be successful. So Liz, I need some volunteers to guess what each of the letters are, as the meaning of each one of the letters in this formula. This is a formula that it took me years and years to put together. It's a secret formula to change the way that we operate in the dairy industry when it comes to human resources to be successful.
All right.
What are each one of those letters?
Christine, what do you think the first R stands for?
And we already talked about these, so it should be easy.
She doesn't have great internet. She might be able to. Cassandra, what do you think the first R stands for?
I'm not sure. I was not good at algebra. Rear is what I'm going to say. I don't know.
What is the first thing that you have to do?
Respect
First
has
R.
been added to the chat. So is it respect, Jorge?
Well, it could be respect, right? But the first thing that you have to do is recruit the right people using the right tools. So that is the first R, right? Recruiting, using rules and regulations, using the mission statement, understanding that, respecting that, understanding the why. So the first R stands for recruiting the right people using the right system in your place. Then the formula says R plus T. What is the next step that you have? T.
Train.
Yes, sir. Excellent. So Liz, you have to give the door prize to the person that had just answered.
I can do that.
For training.
say it aloud.
Training is constant. It's training and training and training and retraining all the time. So people says, look, I'm going to hire you and you're going to come to the farm and you're going to solve my problem with somatic cell count. You're going to leave and everything is going to be fine. No, that's not true. You have to always train. And even if you're training, in one topic, these guys, they like to be trained in other topics. Why the milkers can learn about, feeding practices? Why not? Some people just focus on somatic cell count and milk quality for the parlor guys when they want to learn many, many things. Then it says plus R squared. What is R squared? So we got R plus T plus R squared.
Well, we have resources and respect still in the chat, both which start with R, which seems like a good combo for R squared.
Yeah. So remember one of the things that we talked in one of the slides before, reviews. We do poorly as far as reviews. Review. We never review these employees. We never hear for the feedback. In the dairy industry, the percentage of dairies reviewing workers is very, very minimal. It's really low. So we have to start adapting, more of the practices of review and sitting down with these guys formally in a formal environment where these guys can be reviewed for their benefit and our benefit. And of course, R squared means for, you have to retrain and retrain over and over again. And then it says, divided by B. What is B means here? What does the B mean here?
Is it belief?
Believes. You have to believe. What else? Somebody else. Again, we already talked about these. Is one of the drivers. The first driver. We got 4 drivers. What was the first driver, Lise?
That one was economics, but that doesn't start with a B. So I'm failing your class, Jorge. This isn't great.
Bodies.
Benefits. Remember, everybody wants, have the drive to acquire something. So we have to provide benefits, not only economic benefits, but also cultural benefits. So this is the formula. And if you apply these in all, the businesses, I think we can change these and we can be more successful. But remember, it's 3, 4, and 5. There's no easy solution for these, but you have to combine everything that we have and all the resources. And finally, apply the 4 I's for employee management. These 4 I's come from corporate, but why can we incorporate these in the agricultural business? The first I is for innovation. When you are innovating something in the business, try to include these guys. Inclusion, innovation, thinking about workers, learning, experiences, anything. You have to innovate your human resources. Include these guys, inclusion in any decision. I remember one time when I was working on a farm, I was the herdsman, and then the owner came and changed the whole line, all the liners in the parlor. He never asked us. He never asked for our input, for our feedback. They were lighter, were they heavier? Did I like it? The cows were okay with the liners? Never. One day, just new liners on. He never included our decision, and we felt really bad. We never felt included. Invest in education, invest in resources, invest in human resources. Even if they are not going to stay there longer, you have to do an investment. Those things will pay. And then implement all these things that we talk about today. Some things, already known, some things are new maybe for you, but we ask you to implement these things in your operation or with your customers. And with that, Lise, I'll take questions or comments or anything that you guys have in mind. And I really appreciate the time and your patience with through these conference. And that's my email there. If you guys have any more questions, we also provide private trainings for dairy farms. We create customized professional videos, and we do many things that you guys can have access to through Alltech. And we would like to help you guys there, wherever you guys are.
Thank you, Jorge. That was a great presentation. And now I'll remember: recruit, train, review, and retrain. And it's all down to benefits, beyond economic. I'll remember the B next time. Any other questions for Jorge?
I have a question. I was late, so I missed the first part. The workers, are they primarily international workers that would need like a visa? And since they haven't completed like high school, would we need to help them get like their GED?
Many of the workers that are here, and the ones that we pull from the pool that we have, are unfortunately undocumented. And in one of the slides, I showed the lack of education, so they haven't even, in the majority, haven't complete or finished high school. So many of these workers, due through our legal process, they are not eligible to have a work visa or any kind of other visa. The only visa right now that is more accessible for agriculture, especially on dairies, is a TN visa that you can use workers with a title, either related in agriculture, like veterinarians or agronomists from Mexico or Canada. But many of the workers that we depend on, they have lack of education, and of course the immigration laws are not very easy and understandable for agriculture. So these guys, they don't have access to those resources.
Okay, thank you. But we could definitely, like, I homeschool my children, so I could definitely help them out in areas and materials that's in their language as well. So they could even pursue that, even though it's not really going to be documented that they graduated high school.
You bet. Like again, like I say, these guys are they are so hungry to learn. They love to learn, and whatever you guys can provide, that it will be beneficial for the industry, for your state, and for this country. So appreciate that comment.
Jorge, do you think it would be helpful to translate things like 4-H materials that we usually think of like beginning activities for dairy projects? Have that translated in Spanish to be training material? A lot of that's usually hands-on at a more understandable level.
Anything, anything, as far as, like if you use a lot of, photos, you have to be really, really visual. You have to understand that even some of these guys, they don't know how to read. Some guys, they don't even how to speak Spanish. Many of these guys that are coming now, they speak dialects, Mayan dialects. So we have to think, put that in our minds and try to create, not only translated documents, but also, maybe more movies or more posters or more infographics, more animation, more of those kind of things. I think being visual will help a lot, not just translating, but being visual. But any kind of material, these guys, they will appreciate that. So
I know the farm program has a lot of kind of ready to pre-fill out infographics that you can adapt to your own farm, right? And they have those in English and Spanish, which again, not perfect for dialects, but a starting point.
Yeah, there are so many tools out there. So it's just a matter of, looking for those kind of things. One I remember you, Liz, reach out to me a couple of months ago looking for, videos and stuff. And it was kind of sad that you didn't find anything on NMC. So we as an industry, we as consultant and extensionists, we need to start pushing these guys, these organizations, and even the companies like ourselves to create more and more of these kind of things. If we don't do enough job of training and retaining, those dairies will depart. They're not going to exist here anymore. And if they're not here anymore, my company is not going to be here anymore. And my family also, will be challenged. So this is our business.
Any more questions for Jorge? But there's usually a big lull at the end, but thank you so much, Jorge. That was a wonderful presentation, wonderful as always. And I look forward to dragging you back down to Tennessee sometime.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Bye, everybody.